Good morning, everyone. How's it going so far? Good. Thanks for coming to our session just before lunch. We're going to talk about developers and operations engineers and how they can collaborate better by using System Center 2012, Service Pack 1, and Visual Studio 2012. My name is Daniele Muscetta. I'm a program manager in the System Center Operations Manager team. I own a range of things related to the application performance monitoring with the product team. My colleague here, Sean, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Sean Gibbs, a program manager in the engineering team as well, focusing on application management. And of course, this falls into that bucket with development and operations collaboration.
Great. What we will talk about today, we really want to give you an understanding of what the capabilities are into the System Center 2012 SP1 product in relation to developer and operations interactions, and let you go back to your teams and hopefully being able to adopt these practices and adopt these technologies and start using them. So we'll talk first about what DevOps is and what integrations and what features make this type of interaction possible. So we will show scenarios that allow to transfer operational alerts to Team Foundation servers, so to assign them to development, and how to use the IntelliTrace management pack for IntelliTrace collection and for historical debugging. We will mention, but not cover in depth, the global service monitoring that you have seen also at the keynote, and there has been another session on Monday on that, so we'll kind of glance through it, but we won't go really deep on that piece because it has already been covered. And also a quick look at how some of these scenarios are applicable also to applications running in Azure as well as on-premises. We will not cover a lot of the basic configuration that's required to get application performance monitoring up and running at the beginning, because we think we've shown that enough in the past couple of editions of TechEd, MMS, and there's a lot of recordings out there. There's a lot of documentation. It's been out for a while, so we think that people should have seen that by now. Bear with us if you haven't. You will have to go back and look at those steps again afterward to now to enable the basic configuration. Applications. So you guys, I imagine most of you people who work with System Center are IT pros. They work on that operate quadrant, but you manage applications. You're responsible for keeping those applications up and running. Development produces the applications, builds them, releases them. They obviously want to fix them when things don't work, but sometimes it's difficult to troubleshoot. When you live in the operations world, you are using your own tools, and developers typically don't like to go and access the operations tools. They don't use System Center themselves. They live in Visual Studio. So that is the first obstacle to how can they consume that data. We'll show you some ways so that they can actually see what those applications are doing in production with their familiar tools. When an issue occurs in production, when something does not work as expected, and when your users are having troubles with the application, it's difficult to show to the development whether that incident is something that has to do with code. Developers would like to debug what's happening on the machine, but you as operation typically just want to get it back to work, back running. And so an operation person has a goal of mean time to resolution. When something doesn't work, if a quick reboot would fix it, you do the reboot. But developers might need more information to actually fix the issue, and they might not be able to reproduce the same problem on their development boxes, on the development environment. They might have trouble to understand what caused the problem in the first place. And it's important that they have the visibility on what was not working in production, because otherwise they cannot fix it. So ultimately, everybody in the business wouldn't be able to restore the application to a working state and to make it work better in the future. So it's important that this development life cycle, which tends to be slow due to different tools, different processes, different goals, it's important that this application life cycle can go to shorter cycle, can become faster, that developers are allowed to see what was happening in production while at the same time retaining control and the security of that environment. So not necessarily giving them direct access to the production boxes, but allowing them to see what was happening there, and they in fact collect the right information for them to enable them to debug and troubleshoot what was happening. We think we have produced a set of tools and features and capabilities that we will show you that allow to shorten these cycles and to enable this richer, beneficial communication between the two teams. We believe that by using shared artifacts, things that you will see in a minute in action, things like IntelliTrace, or using the web tests that are being produced by developers to test in production continuously through Global Service Monitor, by forwarding alerts to Visual Studio, to Team Foundation Server, that is the place where the developers live when their attention is required. This should allow this cycle to go faster and to give everybody the right information at the right time, in the right place, or in the place they prefer to receive it at least. Of course, part of this also has to do with, part of shortening this life cycle has also to do with building more automation. You want your processes, whenever possible, to be automated, so you don't want to rely on just trying things out, but you want them to be repeatable. So consistency in deployment is another area where other pieces of the System Center suite, like Virtual Machine Manager, can help you, or Orchestrator, automate those deployments and make them more repeatable and more consistent, so that no issues, that things don't break when those things are done manually. This is not something we will cover, but that's another aspect where this cycle can be facilitated and made faster. So there are a few capabilities that indeed we will focus on during this session. APM is the foundation of some of these capabilities because it enables you to get down to see which line of code is failing in the production application. That's where the whole process of triaging and fixing and escalating issues in production begins. And then we can continue. On the other corner, I put the Global Service Monitor. The Global Service Monitor allows you to create, you create the web tests, so the synthetic transactions with the Visual Studio tool, and developers many times already have those. Global Service Monitor allows you to run those tests from our points of presence in Azure and probing those synthetic transactions on your application on a regular basis, and so using them as tests in production to see what's happening, and so to be able to detect if things break very quickly and from distributed locations, so you know how your site, your application is behaving from different parts of the globe. The parts that we'll focus really in this session are the other two. is the Team Foundation server integration capabilities and the IntelliTrace collection and profiling capabilities that we have enabled.
So for the purposes of, I guess, furthering the conversation along, as an IT pro, one of the things that I've been given access to now is a set of technologies that I'm not 100% sure I've ever used before, cared about, or understand. So as I integrate some of these things, these collections and these monitors, I'm going to get my developer, Daniele, involved in looking at what I'm doing now and looking at what I'm collecting. And then we'll have some conversations around what would we do with these things, who would hand off and how that handoff would look, who would receive the information, give that information back, and so on, until we do the one thing that we care about the most, and that's solve the problem. So, Daniele, I'm going to bring you over and I'm going to ask you to look at some things that I've set up, and it was pretty interesting when I went through that process. And what I've actually put together is a few monitors that report back to me in a visual way, at least fairly visual to me, that I've got some applications here, Dinner Now and Tailspin Toys.
Those are our production applications, aren't they? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So we're monitoring them directly in production. You can see here that we actually have some issues coming back with SLAs, some challenges.
What's going on with Dinner Now? I see the red.
Yep. So let's go ahead and drill into that. I can actually pull up a specific summary page to that. So I can actually see now in detail the different components of the application I'm monitoring, some reports that are coming back from, you can see up here in the top right, the average response time from that GSM monitoring I set up. Had some help in doing that with a web test. I've got some details of the average response times coming back now. So we're actually monitoring when a user comes into the app, how long it takes them to do stuff.
So it's good. Do you have a problem with your network that is so slow?
So when it's like this, I don't really have the details there, so I can actually look elsewhere to see when I have problems with my network by drilling in. And what I want to do is actually look at, for example, being told there's a problem before the customer calls me. So I'm looking at the alerts that come in. This one's specific. I'm going to actually drill into the view of that, specific to client's performance.
Oh, I believe.
So when I receive my alert, and it's now a client performance event, it's just telling me in advance. What'd you do? Normally what we do is we wait for a customer to call. Hasn't been helpful in the past. Hasn't really been the method of alerting that I want. So now that I get this information back, thank you, sir. Now that I get this information back, I can share it with you, right? So I can see that the client's response time from some customer who came in, that's what that alert was. That's what that information was.
I suppose it's interesting. Seems like a nice tool for you guys to understand. So why is it so slow?
Well, that's a good question. That's some of the details that I might not actually understand a little bit from my perspective, because I don't know what you guys wrote, what you did. But I'm able to dig into the application now, at least see why that alert was generated. It's telling me something about the app and what it says is slow, what the customer experienced.
What does it say? It says that this page is very slow.
Well, it's highlighting to me that there's something wrong with the server, because it says right here that the pink is server response time.
I see.
Pink or purple or...
So almost 7 seconds to get the response back from the server? Okay, but I still don't know what's going on there. How can I help you with that?
Well, that's a good question. I was hoping you could answer, but let's go a little bit further. I've noticed that I can actually drill into that and see what the server's response time detail is.
Oh, yeah?
So when I go into the distributed chains, it's going to show me that it's got different pieces of the app that it's calling.
Okay.
And now I can go into that different piece. So I've collected not really an alert, but I've just collected details from that event, right? From that request that the customer came through. So now I'm looking at, I guess, what you guys wrote, right? What the details were that took place.
Oh, this is our code, yeah. So what does it do? 3 seconds for the WCF call. So this is calling web service. So it seems that the front end is low because it's calling the web service tier, which I don't know what the web service tier is doing at this point.
Well,
this seems interesting. Can we go even further from here?
yeah. So
how did you do that?
So go back into distributed chains, and you can see that you've got a longer list of things that are happening. And I actually found from the...
Oh, so I can see the web service calls here?
Exactly. So from the web service call details, you can actually see that they're taking up the majority of the time.
Oh, and you have many of those because this event
Happens
has
over
happened
and over.
multiple times,
Yeah.
I see. Interesting.
So I
didn't
know
know
it's-
this. Your operation tools could go deeper into our code.
Exactly. So it's something that I know is more important. I can look at the amount of information comes in that tells me it is at least a higher level of criticality.
Interesting. So here, 3 seconds are spent in the SQL query. Must be means missing some index or something. Yeah, this is something we should be addressing. I don't think it's any infrastructural problem. It might be that we need to optimize the code, you know?
I could send you that link.
Can you... Oh, but is there a way to see all the times that this thing has happened without going through each one of them every single time, kind of a list or a priority or something that shows me which one is happening more often? I need to prioritize. I've got a lot of bugs, to be honest. I mean, that's not the only one. I understand it's important for you, but we really got a huge log of things to do, and I need to be able to understand which one is most critical. And
so
it seems a bit kind of random exploration this way. I'd like to have a sort of list or prioritize.
the good news, it comes with a lot of reports.
Oh, yeah?
So I was able to generate a report on the applications here. For example, Dinner Now, some of the other components, the services it use. And you can see that it's telling me average response times, how many events we're actually collecting from this application, so we're actually getting details from it. But when I scroll down, it starts to kind of prioritize what some of those top-level problems are.
So this calls to this web service, they actually happen a lot of times. I definitely see, event count 80 times. This report is for how many days? You did it for
This report was a one-day comparison. It's actually looking at 1 week, but comparing one day over and over again.
So
to those
this really
weeks.
happens very often. Yeah, we need to dig into this. Thanks for bringing it to my attention. I need to take a look at this. And this is for Dinner Now. Do we have other things for other applications?
Yeah, so the
going
other
on?
pieces of the application, you can see here, we've got some more details coming in.
I see. Oh, this one is having exceptions so many times. What is this? It's a divide by 0. Oh.
Categorized as
This
critical.
seems like a silly bug. I mean, just like maybe a junior I didn't do the piece. Maybe the other junior developer brought that. That seems like a simple bug. And it should be a simple fix, too.
So you can see all the events that were collected related to it.
Right.
So it's happened a number of times.
And how does it look like? Oh, this one. They do get groomed. You keep the system clean because they're all the same every time.
Yeah, keeps them cleaned up.
Sounds in any useful feature. Yeah, and I can see the parameters that were passed in, and these guys were trying to divide 7 by 0, of course, and they obviously don't handle their input very well, so it's probably a very simple fix. Can you send me this? I probably can get it done even today. I mean, this should be really trivial.
Like I was showing, any one of these can actually go through as a link. I can send you the details.
Does it say IntelliTrace there?
Would you use that? What is it?
Yeah, that sounds good. What is it? Does it convert this thing to IntelliTrace?
Exactly.
That's awesome.
So when it collects it, it makes it a mini IntelliTrace is what I'm told. So it's just a small IntelliTrace snapshot of the event. So you can just download and have that.
Really?
That's exactly what.
Let's take a look. Oh, so it's going to open the file? Yeah, on this box I actually do have Visual Studio, so... But I think I have some previous session that I was using. Maybe let's do it again. So it opens a new window. I'm afraid it was conflicting with what I was doing before.
Okay.
Okay, so this is my exception in IntelliTrace. Guys, this is awesome. Look at that. From your production system.
Exactly. This is the
You
production
know what
app.
this means? I can debug this thing right in my developer workstation like if I was on the server. This is brilliant. Why didn't you implement it earlier? I mean, this is really awesome. Yeah, I think I can fix this with this. I know exactly the line of code that fails. I know exactly where it fails and how parameters that are passed in. It's great. So is there a way when these things happen, in production and they're critical, that you can escalate them to us so we can take a look in this format? That would be great.
So it's got something that I set up. I asked one of the other developers to help me setting up and connecting some of this information called the TFS sync. So he helped me walk through a couple of those things. Maybe you could kind of confirm some of those settings that I had.
Yeah, should be able to. I mean, if it's not too much operational things, if it's just about our TFS system, I should know those things.
Let me go into
what did you set up?
That configuration real quick.
TFS work item. Is it that? Yeah, seems to be that. So what did you do here?
I asked Vitaly the other day to help me set this up. So he walked me through actually where the TFS connector is.
Okay, so that's the TFS machine name. That seems about right. I don't know what this stuff is. Is that your account you're using to talk to it if you have permission? Okay.
So then we had to actually map kind of what some of the apps are back to some of the projects, right? So we picked a project that seemed to be the one that the apps fell into.
Yeah, we don't have many projects on that one, TFS, but this is, so these are all the monitored application you're having?
Those are those production apps, yeah, that I pointed all the monitors.
Well, no, they're not all production. I mean, Dinner Now.
Well, the ones that I selected.
The one you've selected are production. Okay, I see the other ones are all tests and other random applications we have here and there. Indeed, I don't think they're critical for the business now. Those you have selected, they seem about right. Yeah, Tailspin especially lately is making a lot of money. Those toys are selling like crazy. So, yeah, I think it's important to monitor that. Well, it sounds good to me. And and when issues occur, are you forwarding them to me automatically? Are you spamming me with all these tickets?
No, I can actually do it on whenever an issue comes up. I can select the issue.
Okay.
I do
so you
some
triage
triaging.
it first.
Yeah.
You understand if it's really something that needs to come to us. And
Exactly. And then I'll just put it over into your project.
Well, if that's the case, that sounds about good plan. We can definitely. Do I need to save now? We did not change anything,
No,
did we?
didn't need to change.
Okay, so you've done it right. Actually, I believe that's about correct. Yeah.
Great.
So yeah, do let me know if this allows you to forward things to me wherever I am. I mean, whenever these issues come up. Let me close Visual Studio here. I'll take it back later on the other workstation. And so whenever new issues come up, if you can forward them with this mechanism, that would be great. Yeah, good. Just to. Okay, let me know.
I'll do that.
Yeah. This thing died.
That happens occasionally.
Okay. Visual Studio works.
No, that's true.
Well, let me know if new issues appear. I mean, forward them to me. Let me know when you have some production issue. I can take a look. In the meantime, I'll take a look at all those Dinner Now backlogged priority that you told me to investigate and the other bug.
Thanks, Daniele. I appreciate that.
Yeah, see you later.
So you can see some of the things that we can do now allows me to spend a little bit more time triaging some of the details with other parts of my systems. So I might go in, for example, in this, as soon as we get it settled in here, look back at my all-up view of my applications that I've set up, looking at now this 360-degree view of not just the applications, but what's the response times of the applications and the components inside the applications. Here, for example, I may go into looking at some of the network monitoring that I have set up that now can be connected back into these. I can see that all my networks are healthy. I've got one right now I know is unhealthy. I know we've got some work we're doing to that. I can now go into that and kind of get a view of all the nodes that are connected into my network devices. Get some awareness of all the connections into this node. The health state. Everything looks healthy. So when I do have one of those application problems, I can actually rule in and out some of my other resources that those applications rely on. May go into the application monitoring now and look at my web test that I set up. This is where I've actually taken information that the developers have given me that they create these web tests. They've given me a file that I can now upload, and I can actually globally look at that as the application's being requested and tested over time. And these report back into my 360 dashboard. And I can see what the health of each one of these requests are. This application to me is a test application, so I'm not concerned about these problems. I know this application is going to experience some challenges. I'm not going to actually report these out, have any other conversations around
that. Yeah, that is not the dinner now production version.
Exactly.
It's the one we are trying to rebuild in Azure, but isn't finished yet. I think it still has some glitches. I'd like to see them, but I don't think it's priority for you now to...
Yeah, it's not something I'm going to be too concerned about. Not something I'm going to wake Daniele up in the middle of the night. But I might go up back to my dashboard view, take a look at one of the other applications. Application looks like it had some reliability issues. A little concerned about that. So I want to look at the details that made those issues up. For this application, since it's one of my top applications I care about, I created an alert view specific to that application just to show me the alert. When I look at that alert, some of the things inside the alert I can automatically indicate to me where to go with this problem. It's an exception in the code. Daniele already volunteered to look at this stuff. So let me go ahead and actually submit that over. So now we'll actually let Daniele know about the problem just by sending it over to engineering using the TFS sync.
So do you want to take a look? Okay.
Yeah, so if you want to dig into that problem for me and actually solve it.
I was trying to fix the other bug. Well, okay, I'll take a look. Let's see. So I suppose I need my Visual Studio now because, I mean, your tool is nice, but I don't really feel at home there. So you say by doing that, you should have forwarded that to me, right?
Yeah, that should have actually
in development land, I mean, we really look at these work items, our backlog, so we have all sort of work items filed. I see there's a bunch of old ones. Are you sure it makes it? How quick is it to propagate it? It's fairly quick. There's a refresh rate behind it. It's not going to be instantaneous. I see. It says ticket ID. Should it give you back a ticket ID when this has been propagated, I suppose? Let's see. I haven't received anything yet, but hopefully.
Yeah, so it hasn't come back to me saying what the ticket ID is, so it's still in the background thinking about it. If everything worked perfectly, we wouldn't need management tools at all, right? So it's a little slow in the background. Have you assigned me this multiple times in the past, maybe? Can it be the same thing? And maybe you did not tell me? I was looking at it earlier today. I see. So maybe this is actually the same issue. I don't need a duplicate.
Let me just take a look. Maybe a new one comes in. This thing. Let me look at the existing one in the meantime, if you say it's so similar. So what does he have? So this one has an IntelliTrace file already attached. Okay, let's take a look at that. SQL exception. Missing tax rate. Maybe we have a bug here. And here I can look at my code and see where the query is failing and what was happening. And I can move around my code and see the details of the exception. But with this export format, it doesn't seem to give me quite enough information.
I want to establish something, though. We've established it's your fault, right? I just want to be clear.
Well, it sounds like a bug somewhere.
All right, I'm good.
It's not my fault. I mean,
well, okay.
Everybody makes mistakes, dude.
Okay, you're right. I apologize.
Yeah, so I suppose I need to, from this IntelliTrace file, I can see where the issue is occurring, but it still doesn't quite have all the details I would like to have. This seems more like a full IntelliTrace. You know what the difference is?
Not sure I know the difference.
So it seems that this one is just the error, the exception, and has been converted, but only as that step.
Okay.
And with full IntelliTrace, you would be able to collect me a log which kind of traces all the sequence of what's happening in the code as the user interacts with the machine, with the application, and trace.
I know we can do that. I know that there's a capability for me to enable that. If you want to just send that back to me, I'll go ahead and go into the system and enable something called collect more details or collect an IntelliTrace log.
Yes, I can do that. I can do that. So if I assign it back to you, where is my original? So I believe I need more data, so I'll set it into this state.
Great.
And yeah, can you help me collect full IntelliTrace based on that? And this should, set that up, then I think we can probably repro. I think this error happens when people are trying to place orders, so it's actually important. I mean, we're losing business if they don't manage to submit orders. That application makes a ton of money. I wonder if we put some wrong code out in production last time we revved it. So please collect me the full IntelliTrace, and then with that, hopefully I've got more information that actually help me solve it.
Great. So one of the things that at least in my mind, the differences of what we do is, and correct me if I'm wrong, it looked like we collected production application details, a mini IntelliTrace, so to speak, that you could use and solve a number of problems. But in this case, you need more. You need diagnostics detail,
correct.
not
the
monitoring.
The one you gave me that you called mini IntelliTrace, indeed, is just a photo of that error, but it doesn't have all the sequence of steps that led to that error. And I would like to see that to understand what people have actually been clicking on and how it reached that point in the code.
With my new upgrade, or my addition of SP1, it now has this thing called Collect IntelliTrace Snapshot.
Oh, yeah? So we actually have tasks for you to do that?
Exactly.
Without going on the box?
So I don't have to go to the box. I don't have to do anything.
Oh, because in Visual Studio with IntelliTrace, we usually just launch a command line. We do it there on the box.
So since I don't want you to
convenient.
Don't want you to access my box, I'll do it for you.
Well, I don't mind accessing your box, but if you really don't want me to, then please go ahead and collect it for me. Thank you.
So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and turn that on. Do it right from my console.
You did a collect rather than start.
Yep.
I suppose.
I wanted to do start.
Yeah, okay. That's fine.
And then it'll reach out, it'll take my monitoring for APM off. I know that it has to come off for us to do IntelliTrace. It'll put the IntelliTrace
So why don't you
collection
just
on.
leave IntelliTrace on?
Well, IntelliTrace is a diagnostics tool, so I don't want to leave a diagnostics tool that collects what you were saying, all that detail. That's a little too much to leave on one system, one app. So
I see your point.
pull it down. The monitoring helped us get to this point, right? So I learned through the alert, through the initial details, that I needed more.
True.
So it just came up green, and it told me that the app's now monitoring with IntelliTrace. It's in that
okay.
diagnostics mode.
So well, let's give it a try. Let's see if we can place an order. Let's go to my other box where I can test.
So you think you'll be able to recreate that, or you're...
I should be able to. Well, let's try. I mean, that was happening when people were submitting orders. It was saying it was mixing the tax rate. I believe that application calculates the tax rate based on which region you're placing the order from, because different countries have different tax rates. So it might have to do with that. And let's see if we manage to reproduce it.
So at a minimum, that monitoring that we did collect helps us recreate it. So we know where to switch and get into.
I think so. So this is our store, and I can buy planes, toy planes, and
probably a few
I think
countries
I've logged
that
in
want to
here
buy
before,
some.
so actually I have one already in my cart, so I could probably just try to buy that. This is a test account I'm using, so I can keep ordering things without doing real transaction in the system, but hopefully it helps us reproduce the issue. And I try to check out and buy this plane. This is kind of my data. Yeah, I want to buy it. Go ahead. Oh, yeah, it actually fails. You're right. This is not working. So, but now we have the IntelliTrace turned on, so we actually should be collecting all these steps. Okay, I think now we reached the error that people were seeing. So I believe at this point you should be able to collect me that IntelliTrace file you turned on earlier and let me see that.
Okay, so let me go ahead and switch out of IntelliTrace collection real quick. Get my details back over into Ops Manager, into my shared folder so I can have that information. Looks like it was successful in pulling that.
So you can stop it.
Put it back into monitoring mode instead of diagnostics mode for
I see.
lack of better description. I mean, we want to continue to be alerted. So when this problem...
having this amount of data all the time, just having an indication that things have been happening so you can triage it. That makes sense.
It looks like we've successfully put it back into that mode. And then I'm going to go ahead and confirm that I have that snapshot. Give it a few.
So is this where they're all saved?
Yep. So here we have the tailspin snapshot of what actually took place. That's that log file you need.
Yeah, this seems to be also bigger, and they should have all the sequence of events that led to this exception. And hopefully I can take a look at that. Just I was still having the previous session running. So let me open this one. Oh, yes, see, this has all sorts of things that were happening in the application, not just that one exception. This is much richer in details. So now I can actually see all other things that were happening. There's a few missing pages, maybe things that not necessarily critical, but there's a few other things happening. Oh, wow, and now we can actually look at all the queries and all the parameters. Wow, this seems really useful to me. I mean, with this, I believe I should be able to pinpoint where the problem is and do a fix. Yes. It might take a few hours. I mean, I need to work on it. I can't just do it right away, but with this, I really have a lot more information. I can move around my code and understand what parameters were passed in and the connection strings and all the right information to
so this will give
possibly produce a fix. Yeah.
Okay, so it'll not only give us the fix, but it'll give us the capability now with all that extra stuff to know how to go back in and retest and confirm that your fix is good. So we can even modify maybe the web test that they gave me, upload that,
Yeah.
And that monitor for that fix now, moving forward. Is that something we can do?
Yeah, I
That's
suppose. I'll try to understand from this data where the exact problem is, write a fix for it. I'll run it through my tests, update those tests, and when that phase is ready, then I'll resolve back the incident to you, so then it can be deployed in production again with the fixed code.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it'll come back to me, and it'll show up in now my console.
Yeah, I will resolve it to you, and I will show resolved and assign to you. Resolve it from there.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You gave me quite a bit of work today, but
well, I think that
I suppose
from the perspective of conversations before, this is a conversation that was always challenging for us in the past because I never had the information to that detail.
True.
Obviously didn't know what you were talking about when you said you needed more, but now that we've kind of combined this knowledge base in this collection, I think that's great. I think we'll solve problems faster.
Yeah, I think so too. That sounds like a very good improvement to our process. Yes.
And I know, I guess for the audience, we kind of bounced around a little bit. We wanted to purposely take you through kind of a new introduction to this, because this is some of the things that our expectations are you may find yourself going through as you're trying to introduce it to different team members or new team members. It's something that we've seen and we've been involved in our past, in our history. So it's interesting to us in just not putting the technology in front of you, but how some of you may even deal with it and how some of you may have dealt with it. Has anybody had conversations like this between dev and ops with either technologies or not technologies to help the conversation? Yes, no?
I see quite a few hands.
That's
I suppose it is a common thing that happens when you're interacting between these two different parts of the organization.
In the past...
And ultimately, we're all in this together. I mean, we want to solve problems together.
We're here for the business unit, right? So without selling model airplanes, we're not making money, and we're not able to buy more technology and sell more model airplanes. So we're in the business together to help do that. I'm also curious, though, when you have those conversations, is it more than just one or two people in the room? Is it more than a developer and an IT pro? Is it several developers? Is it a war room? How many people have an outage that's pretty significant, something like their main app go down, and it's a war room of people together? Is that something that's normal? A little less normal,
I see
it looks
a few
like.
hands, a little less than before, but still a few hands, yes. That probably when teams are bigger and, yeah.
Well,
this is the demo we did. So just to recap a bit we saw different parts with the application at the center being monitored by APM. This feeds performance, reliability, and availability information into Operations Manager. Flips monitors to warning or critical state, generates alerts, does all the usual things that you guys have been expecting from Operations Manager. But the interesting bits that we have added now allow you to pass these alerts to the Team Foundation server system. That's where the developers look at their working backlog. And these work items can be seen by the developer in their familiar tools. And they can get rich information to IntelliTrace, either the IntelliTrace snapshot of a specific error or an IntelliTrace full collection, like Sean enabled for me in the role-playing we did. And at the same time, if developers have built tests to run against those applications, those can be fed into Operations Manager and into the Global Service Monitoring service, which will run those tests over and over against your application to quickly catch issues happening if something is broken from different locations around the globe. This is a service that we control. We have seen you've seen also in the keynote, Global Service Monitor. We did not go into how to configure it because there was a session on Monday. If you haven't seen that, I recommend you go watch the recording. They went into the details also how to actually create a web test, which is, of course, something a developer could already have, but it is also something that it's easy also for you to create if you want to. So they also shown in the session how to go about creating those tests. And the Global Service Monitoring is an attached service to Operations Manager. It's free. I mean, it's part of your software assurance benefits, so essentially it's free because if you already have the System Center suite, you can connect the operations manager environment to the global service monitor and use all those watcher nodes in the cloud that we provide to run those tests. And ultimately, we look also at the client-side event from at the beginning, the dinner now, the one with the colored bar and the pie chart showing that the issue was a slow page for the user, but that a lot of that was depending on the server time. It could have told us otherwise. It could have told us that the browser was slow to render. It could have told us that the network was slow. Instead, it told us that it was a server issue, and that from there we continued onto the code onto the server. So it's really a 360-degree views with all these capabilities of how your applications are performing to enable you to fix, resolve issues sooner, and redeploy, and improve. A few nifty details about things that we did not specifically call out what capability was in 2012, vanilla RTM, and in 2012 SP1 specifically, so just so you know. In 2012, we mostly had integrated the APM technology into Operations Manager, but in the SP1 release, we continued enhancing on it and supporting new types, more modern types of applications, such as MVC framework. We enhanced the support for WCF. In the 2012 release, we were only limited to monitor web application, where in SP1, we also enabled monitoring of Windows services that use the .NET framework. We have enabled monitoring of SharePoint 2010 in SP1. And we have enabled a set of logic inside the agent that understand the Azure SDK. So it's able to tell you not just that a SQL server, a SQL query is slow, but it's also able to tell you things like access to a storage account in Azure is slow, potentially, or is failing because of the wrong credential, things like this. We have added this IntelliTrace integration, which you just saw in action. The alert attachment management pack is really a piece of infrastructure that allows those IntelliTrace files to be transported and associated to these work items in TFS. It's some piece of plumbing that allows this communication to happen. And ultimately, we enhanced our communication support. In 2012, we were only supporting Team Foundation Server 2010. Now we also support 2012. The connector has more options. And we have enabled those nice visualization and dashboards that show you this aggregated information all in one place. All of these things are documented. Documentation is up to date. I left here in the slide a few links about the basic configuration required to get APM going, both what was necessary for the 2012 release and the additions in SP1. I just leave them here for reference so you can go and learn on TechNet more about this. And this is just about the basic configuration. And there's more links about the process model on how to integrate with TFS, escalate issues, reassign them back to engineering and then back to operation when necessary, and how those resolution states really work and what they're supposed to mean. And by the way, Byron, our technical writer who's written most of this documentation, will be having another session, I believe tomorrow. I don't remember if I think it's in the morning, but I need to check. It's called something about the new management packs in Operations Manager SP1. And it goes into all the nifty details of the overrides you might need to configure. We just shown the basic flow of the TFS integration, but there are more things that you can configure. Whereas the shared location where my files are copied versus the frequency of how things get updated, all sorts of things. And so if you're interested in this and to go more into the actual bit of configuration, I encourage you to attend his session tomorrow. And I think we're at the end. We've been going a bit fast, but I don't think it's too much of a bad thing since we're open to take questions at this point from you guys. And then everybody probably will go to lunch, I suppose.
Yeah.
Any questions? Feedback? Ideas? Can you come to the microphone, please, so it gets recorded? Yes, thank you. Oh, is it off? Well, okay, just say it. I'll repeat the question for the recording.
Yeah, the question is it's not?
Yes.
Oh, no, now it's on. The question is, if we have multiple TFS instances, how does this work? And I mean, it doesn't seem like there's send to engineering. You'd have to do one for each of the things. And
You can configure, so the question again is about if you have multiple TFS, you can configure those connections. We configured the wizard once for one TFS, but you can do it for multiple one. And in each one, you can specify which project and which area path to use in TFS to contain those issues. And you can associate specific components or applications that you're monitoring to specific project. So the system knows the routing. If you're forwarding an alert for application dinner now, maybe it goes to one TFS, and if you're forwarding for application tailspin toys, it goes to another TFS if you configure the routing that way through the multiple wizards. I can even quickly pull it up for you and show you where those options are. So I, of course, will have to create multiple instances of this template for my multiple TFSs, specifying credentials and the URL to talk to that specific TFS system. And depending on what I enable, did I double click? Yes. On what I enable in project settings, I'm mapping team projects to specific components. So I'm saying that these components that I am monitoring, the one I've selected, they have to go to a specific area path or project or both. So by doing that, I can, in one template, I enable a certain application, and in another template, enable another application.
so if it gets assigned to engineering, it gets routed to the appropriate
through this logic.
TFS
Yes, correct.
based on this configuration.
Yes.
The other question is it seems like the routing is associated with an open alert. And what happens if that gets closed, which honestly needs to be done?
When the synchronization is bidirectional. So whenever the ticket gets resolved or closed, the states are propagated both ways. If you close it in OM, it's closed in TFS. If you close it in TFS, it's closed in OM. If you add nodes to the history, it gets propagated in the alert history in OM and vice versa.
So you can't, if it's closed, you can't assign it to engineering.
You are effectively reopening it if you are assigned it to engineering, which is possible. Maybe they tell you they fixed it and they close it. And then you figure out that it's still not completely working. You might reopen that manually. You go to your closed alerts and you reassign it to them and say, hey, sorry, this isn't fixed.
Keep in mind the use case is when you get an alert and you're assigning that to engineering, you're probably not going to close that because the thought process is it's still a bug. Doesn't need to be closed yet because it's going to happen again. So that's our thinking behind that. When engineering now fixes the problem, it has the capability in the sync to come back and close that for you. So they fix it in the code, publish new code, select it as closed, and it'll close in Operations Manager.
Technically, the developers will mark it resolved for you to see that has been resolved. It means the fix is there, and then it's for you to close. But you can do otherwise if you choose so.
Yeah, but things like this can take months to fix, you know. So it's like, it seems, does all the information that's related to the alert get forwarded into the TFS?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And then if it gets closed or, pardon me?
The question is, can you close it after you assign it to engineering, let them get the information?
I mean, here, the deal with us is we forward all of our alerts up to another system so that it opens help desk cases with, or an incident on another system. And, you know, you have people who are trying to figure out what the problems are, and that's the place where people keep track of what's been done to fix the problem.
Then,
and if we have this, then it just kind of breaks it.
there are multiple ways that this process can work. This process with direct communication between operations manager and Netting Foundation server is really a fairly agile process. You might have more structured ITIL-based change management or escalation or incident management processes that require you to open tickets in a different system. We don't impose you to use this feature. You can continue using that forwarding, whether that works, still collect the IntelliTrace as necessary. It gets dumped on a file share and get those people a link to the information to take a look. So it can still work outside of TFS if you are not using TFS, so you require a different ticketing. You will not forward it this way. You will forward it with the other process you have and maybe leverage the capabilities of passing the data. Does that make sense?
Can the connection be one way and not be synchronized?
No, it's two ways.
If you close the ticket, does the file go away? Does the file get deleted?
No, the file stays on the share. That's a grooming procedure. It keeps so many days.
I have a related question. If the alert gets closed and eventually groomed and the work item is still open in TFS,
We don't groom the work items in TFS. Nothing in TFS ever goes away.
yeah,
Software versioning, things are supposed to keep them forever. So yeah, that's.
so they'll have it. Is there a way to recreate that alert or bind it to some alert?
No, you won't recreate the alert manually because typically you don't create alerts manually in OM anyway. But if the issue is still present, trust me, it will appear again on its own.
Sure.
So yeah.
Cool.
You had another question here? No? It's already been resolved? It's already been answered? Okay. The question is whether the type of work item that we create. So in this version, we create a new work item type. It's neither a bug nor a task. An operational issue. And it gets created when you first connect the two systems, when you run the wizard the first time. So for the synchronization to happen, once the work item type has been already created in TFS, for the synchronization to happen, you only need a user that has contributor access, so they can create those items and update them. But to create the definition of the work item type the very first time, you will be prompted for credential when doing the connection. We skipped the step in the demo because we had already set it up. You will be prompted, so you can invite your TFS administrator, will type the password for you, the work item type gets created, and then it's set up. Can you check in against an operational issue? I believe you can. It might depend on the TFS configuration and your check-in policy, but I believe you can. It's just a special work item type because we need this resolution state, so it wouldn't map to anything that's already in the TFS process model as it ships. So we had to add it for now. We are investigating whether this could change in the future and reuse existing work item types, but we don't know the outcome of that yet.
So the team are you updating the process like what they have in the work item that you
We are updating and creating a new work item type. Does it go across team projects or does it? I believe it's per project, but I need to check it. I don't remember it. I didn't hear you, sir.
So when you create the synchronization,
When you create the synchronization?
that's when it updates the process template?
Yes. When you create the synchronization the first time, it asks you for credentials in order to go and create that. And then it doesn't need those credentials anymore. It does not store them. It will ask you for a RNS account in Operations Manager, but that RNS account needs to have a lot less privileges than the one you use to create the work item definition, because that only needs to create instances of work items. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
You have another question?
Is it possible to collect the IntelliTrace snapshots from App Diagnostics console?
From the application diagnostics console, is it possible to collect IntelliTrace? So you cannot launch the full IntelliTrace collection. That we have essentially that you have those tasks. What those tasks in the operations console do, if they target one or more agents, depending on what you select in the task. Typically, you want to do it on one agent of a farm, not all of them at the same time, because it will add overhead. You select that. If the IntelliTrace collector has never been used on that machine, you're targeting the IntelliTrace collector, so the cab file, the same one that you get from Visual Studio, gets deployed to the machine and used and run. The task lives only in Operations Manager. From application diagnostics, the only option you have in regards to IntelliTrace currently is to export to IntelliTrace format an existing exception event.
So if you don't mind, I have a question for that. So your thinking is App Diagnostics Console, the developers use and enable them to do it? Is that the thinking?
Yeah, and the guys with the operations manager don't even see the alerts in the console because we have unchecked the...
Yeah, so you're not creating alerts based on it, you're collecting details for them. I get it.
I see.
Yeah.
So if you want to delegate the devs to essentially start and stop IntelliTrace collection themselves, is that what you want to do? Yeah. We think that this is more of an operational activity because you are essentially switching off one profiler, switching the other one on. So it will have a little bit of an impact when you do that. It will have a blip on the application at that point. There's no other way around. You typically do that when you need to troubleshoot something that's happening and you cannot repro otherwise. So it's a small cost to pay to get the rich information for a short while, then turn it back to monitoring mode where it's lightweight, where it doesn't hurt, where it's all good. And so that is something that you still has an effect in production, so you want to control that. That's a bit the thinking behind this.
It's actually purposely done that way.
Otherwise, developers would have access to the system and would be able to launch IntelliTrace in the first place, which is probably what they normally don't tend to have, at least that's a bit the thing. Okay? Okay, I think we are out of time.
More questions?
No, there's one more
Yep.
question? Okay, we'll take it.
Yes, the question is in your demo you showed having to, when you turned on, switched from the APM to the full IntelliTrace.
Yes.
That made me wonder, is there a problem if somebody does IntelliTracing on the same system and not using SCOM to kind of turn off the APM?
In the .NET framework currently only allows one profiler to run at any given time. We can now have two. It's a limitation on .NET. Therefore, it's either the profiler that's lightweight for 24-hour-a-day monitoring, or it's the full-blown IntelliTrace collection which traces a lot of data, but it's heavier on the system.
Yeah.
And so that's why you need to do the switch.
If you try to point IntelliTrace at an application that's already being monitored with APM, it'll fail. IntelliTrace won't hook in. So that's what that task does, is gracefully do that for you.
And that's fine. I'm just trying to figure out if really the problem I'm going to run into is if a developer turns on IntelliTrace, they will break the APM monitoring, won't they?
If they use that task, if you give them access to the console or the
they
web...
won't have access.
So they do have access to production in your case?
Pardon me?
Do they have access to production in your case?
You know, if stuff gets bad.
Well, yes, then you need to coordinate that, because in order to use IntelliTrace, you need to switch APM off. There is only one provider at a time that's allowed by the .NET framework. And that's something we are having a conversation with developer division, with the .NET framework team, and to see whether they can address this demand in the future, both for us, for this coexistence, and of course they might want to do it also for third parties. They use the same technology and have all these things coexist, but they don't let this happen at the moment. So
essentially they couldn't do it without you being involved, because APM won't go away. It's going to monitor it. Every time they try to hook into it, it's already going to be monitored. They'll collide.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it breaks whichever one wins during the startup. It'll break the loser, which could be either one.
Yeah, would require a little coordination to essentially stop the lightweight profiling and then turn it on. But again, we try to build tools that facilitate this switch with a simple task, or a couple of tasks, versus having this more manual conversation and coordination to a place switch that off for me because I need to use this other one instead. And
Just to bring it up a level too, keep in mind where our hopes are APM solves the majority of the data points they need anyway. So if they're getting that data and it's configured to the depth, sometimes you can just configure APM slightly more, gather a little bit more, and it'll still give them what they need.
Yeah.
So they don't even have to ever use the IntelliTrace unless it is a really big issue. Because when you get diagnostics tools in production, it should be a pretty big issue that you're trying to solve. One that's gone through these other processes, so to speak.
I hope that was okay. No more questions? Then I suppose we can go to lunch.
Yeah, so
you
everybody
do
gets...
have one question. That's the gentleman there has another question.
Can this SCUM 2012 agent coexist with Ivy Code agent?
No. You can coexist, but it's yes and it's no at the same time. I'll explain in details. The question is about coexisting of the old Avicode agent with the operations manager agent. First of all, Avicode 5.7 is going out of support now in April. Anyhow, in order to allow migration, since the APM piece and Avicode, they cannot really coexist, when you install Operations Manager Agent on a system that already has Avicode, we will not replace it. We will leave that in place and do not install the APM piece for the time being, because we think you might still be using that. When you then are ready to switch off Avicode and remove it, you can do a repair of the agent and the missing piece will be added at that point. That's the flow, pretty much, to migrate. Does that make sense? Okay.
And one do the instrument code instrument, Avicode can monitor both the web-based application, also the normal console application, as long as you set up entry point to monitor. And I'm not sure, can the new agent do the same thing?
No, we do not support console applications. We only support Windows services and web-based IIS hosted applications in APM.
In the resource links that are provided in there, is there any guidance on like specific namespaces that are appropriate to monitor in a production environment, or monitoring thresholds that minimize impact to applications but still give meaningful data?
There are a few documents that explain a bit how to go about tuning that on TechNet. I can send you maybe some links if you shoot me an email later, but the general process is a bit to look at what's missing. If you need more, then the developer will tell you, hey, but...
Well, in SP1, we actually enable all namespaces.
In SP1, since most people ended up enabling all as the first step they were doing, that's correct. We turned that on, although it's not imposed on you. It's just an handy default in the template. If you feel you don't want it, you can still take it off. But we made it a handy default.
It's a great question, but it's a challenging question because it's very iterative and very dependent on your app.
Yes.
So when you collect data, you're going to need to collect some data, see what the impact is, decide what's important. And it might not be the namespace, it might be at the class level that you need something, so you turn off the overall namespace and gather the class level. And you would only do that if that's impacting the application. Otherwise, you'll leave them all on.
Right.
Collect everything you can collect, as much as you can collect, right? That's the best thing to do. If it doesn't impact it that much, because it's going to impact it, it's hooking in and doing stuff, right? But if it's not noticeable, collect it.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks for the questions.
Any other questions? Looks like everybody gets a little free time for lunch then. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.